Nari Kim walked through the long hallway of the Galactic Council building. Her shoes made soft clicking sounds on the smooth metal floor. She was new to this job, only 3 months as a junior diplomat for Earth. Everything still felt strange and exciting to her. She stopped walking when she saw something that confused her. Ambassador Kyung-ho Park was walking alone down another hallway. No guards walked with him. No escorts stayed close by his side. He just walked by himself, carrying a small data pad and looking completely relaxed. This was wrong, Nari thought. Every other species that came to the council had protection. The tall, gray-skinned Velthari always traveled in groups of 5. They carried special sound machines that made soft humming noises around them. Their bodies looked like they were made of crystal, and even small vibrations could hurt them badly. The massive Gorvan needed 3 engineering robots that followed them everywhere. These robots checked the floor strength before each step. The Gorvan were so heavy that normal floors could break under their weight. Their thick, rock-like skin made them look like walking mountains. The Nimari floated in clear bubble suits filled with purple gas. They could not breathe normal air. Their thin, ghost-like bodies would die in minutes without their special atmosphere. Guards always stayed near them to watch their life support systems. Even the fierce Zephyrian warriors traveled, with armed escorts. Their bird-like faces and sharp claws made them look dangerous, but they still followed council rules about security. But humans walked alone. Kyung-ho disappeared around a corner, and Nari realized she had never questioned this before. Why were humans different? Why did the council allow them to move freely when everyone else needed supervision? Nari decided to follow her curiosity. She walked quickly to catch up with the ambassador. She found him in the small garden area that sat in the center of the building. He was sitting on a bench, reading something on his data pad. Sunlight came through the glass ceiling above. "Ambassador Park?" Nari said softly. Kyung-ho looked up and smiled. He was in his 50s, with kind eyes and gray hair at his temples. "Nari, right? How are you settling in?" "Very well, sir, thank you." Nari sat down next to him on the bench. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do we walk alone? Every other species has guards or escorts or special equipment. But humans just walk around by themselves. Nobody stops us. Nobody follows us. Why?" Kyung-ho closed his data pad and was quiet for a moment. He looked at the strange alien plants growing around them. Some had blue leaves that sparkled. Others had thick purple stems that twisted toward the light. "You think it's because they trust us?" he asked. "Well, yes, isn't it?" Kyung-ho laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. "Nari, trust is when you believe someone will do what you expect them to do. The council doesn't trust us at all." "Then why?" "They're afraid of us." Nari felt confused. "Afraid? But we're one of the smaller species. We're not as strong as the Gorvan. We can't fly like the Nimari. We don't have advanced technology like the Velthari." "You're thinking about the wrong kind of strength," Kyung-ho said. "Let me ask you something. If you saw someone getting hurt right now, what would you do?" "I would help them." "Without asking permission?" "Of course." "Without checking with your supervisor?" "If someone was in danger, yes." "Without waiting for the proper forms to be filled out?" Nari looked at him strangely. "Sir, if someone was hurt, I wouldn't think about paperwork." Kyung-ho nodded slowly. "That's exactly what scares them." Before Nari could ask what he meant, alarms started ringing throughout the building. Red lights flashed on the walls. A voice spoke over the communication system in the common galactic language. "All personnel report to emergency stations. Level 5 crisis alert, repeat, level 5 crisis alert." Nari jumped up from the bench, her heart started beating fast. "What's happening?" Kyung-ho stood up too, but he looked calm. "I don't know yet, but watch what happens next. Watch how the different species respond." They walked quickly toward the main council chamber. In the hallways, Nari saw chaos. The Velthari had gathered in a tight group. They were making high-pitched sounds at each other. Their crystal-like bodies were flashing different colors as they tried to make decisions together. The Gorvan had stopped moving completely. They stood like statues while their engineering robots sent signals back to their home world. They would not move until their clan leaders told them what to do. The Nimari floated in circles inside their bubble suits. Purple gas swirled around them faster and faster. They were trying to link their minds together to share thoughts, but it was taking time. The Zephyrian warriors stood in perfect formation. They waited for orders from their commanders, who were waiting for orders from their generals, who were waiting for orders from their emperor. But the humans were different. Human diplomats and workers moved quickly through the halls. They did not wait for instructions. They helped organize evacuation routes. They checked on other species who looked confused or scared. They started solving problems before anyone told them to. Nari watched Ambassador Kyung-ho walk straight to the Velthari group. He spoke quietly to their leader, then moved to help a young Nimari whose bubble suit was making warning sounds. "See?" said a voice behind Nari. She turned around. Dr. Sun Young-han was standing there. She was the human scientist who studied alien psychology for the council. "See what?" Nari asked. "Every other species waits for permission to act. They need approval from their groups, their leaders, their systems, but humans just do what needs to be done." The alarms stopped ringing. The crisis alert ended. It had been a drill, testing emergency procedures. Slowly, the different species began to relax and return to their normal activities. "That's why we walk alone," Dr. Sun Young said. "Not because they trust us, because they know that if they tried to control us, we might do something they can't predict." Nari looked around at the aliens returning to their duties. She was starting to understand something important, something that made her feel proud and worried at the same time. "What would happen," she asked, "if we didn't follow their rules?" Kyung-ho had returned and heard her question. He looked at her with serious eyes. "Then you would learn why being free to walk alone is both humanity's greatest gift and our heaviest burden." 50 years ago, Admiral Daewon Choi sat in the observer section of the Great Council chamber. He was not there to speak or vote. Humans were still new members of the galactic community. They could only watch and learn. The chamber was huge, built to hold thousands of beings from across the galaxy. The ceiling reached so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top. Different sections were designed for different species. Some areas had thick floors for heavy beings. Others had floating platforms for those who could not walk on solid ground. Daewon found the meetings boring. The council moved very slowly. Every decision needed to go through committees, subcommittees, and review boards. A simple vote about trade routes could take months to complete. Captain Yoonji Lee sat next to him. She was young and impatient. Her dark eyes showed her frustration as she watched alien delegates argue about minor details for hours. "How do they get anything done?" she whispered. "They don't," Daewon replied quietly. "That's the point. They believe slow decisions are safe decisions." Behind them sat Lieutenant Commander Bo-Ram Shin and her security team. They were there as guards, but since humans were only observers, they had nothing to guard against. They mostly tried to stay awake during the long, dull speeches. The current debate was about fishing rights in the outer spiral. The Aquatic Federation wanted to expand their territory. The Star Mining Guild said this would hurt their operations. Both sides had been talking for 6 hours without making any progress. Then everything changed. A communication signal broke through the chamber's systems. The signal was weak and full of static, but the message was clear enough. It came from the Altarian colonies in the Vega sector. "Emergency and under attack. Zephyrian ships. Civilians dying. Please help." The signal cut off. The chamber fell silent. Daewon felt his stomach turn cold. The Altarians were a peaceful species. They looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. They had no military, no weapons, no way to defend themselves. Their colonies were farming worlds that fed many other species. The High Chancellor Vex Mori called for order. His voice was calm and formal. "We have received a distress signal. This matter will be referred to the Military Committee for review." The Velthari delegate's crystal body flashed different colors as she spoke. "The Military Committee must first verify the signal's authenticity. This could take several standard days. The Gorvan representative's deep voice rumbled through the chamber. Our clan elders must be consulted before any military action can be approved. This process requires at least 2 weeks. The Namari floated in their bubble suits, making soft sounds to each other. Collective consciousness must be achieved before decisions can be made. We estimate 3 weeks for full mental linking. More distress signals came through, each one weaker than the last. The Altarians were begging for help. Their voices spoke of burning cities and dying children. Yunji grabbed Daiwan's arm. We have to do something. We're observers, he reminded her. We have no authority here. Those people are dying right now, while we sit here talking about committees and procedures. The debate continued around them. The council members argued about proper channels and legal procedures. They discussed whether the attack was verified or just a misunderstanding. They talked about forming investigation teams and requesting formal documentation. More signals came through. Fewer voices each time. The Altarians were losing hope. Yunji stood up suddenly. Her movement was so quick and unexpected that many alien delegates turned to look at her. Where are you going? Daewon asked. To save them. Captain, sit down. We cannot act without council approval. I don't need their approval to do what's right. She walked toward the exit. Boram and her security team followed without being asked. They moved like a unit, like soldiers who had made a decision together without speaking. Daewon felt torn. His training told him to follow protocol. His duty was to observe and report, not to take action. But his conscience told him something different. Another signal came through. This one was just crying. The voice of an Altarian mother calling for her lost children. Daewon stood up and followed his people. The alien delegates watched in confusion as the humans left the chamber. Some tried to call them back. The High Chancellor demanded they return to their seats. But the humans kept walking. In the docking bay, Yunji was already preparing her ship for departure. The vessel was small compared to most council ships, but it was fast and well-armed. 3 other human ships were powering up, their engines. Admiral, Boram said, we're ready to go. This is not authorized, Daewon said. We will be breaking council law. Yes, sir, we know. We could be expelled from the galactic community. Yes, sir. We might start a diplomatic incident. Probably, sir. Daewon looked at his people. They were waiting for his decision, but he could see in their eyes that they had already made their choice. They would go with or without his approval. How long to reach Vega Sector? He asked. 18 hours at maximum speed, Yunji replied. And how long will it take the council to approve a rescue mission? At least 3 weeks if they approve it at all. The distress signals had stopped coming. Either the Altarians had been saved, or there was no one left to call for help. Daewon made his decision. Launch all ships maximum speed to Vega Sector. As their small fleet left the station, Daewon thought about what they were doing. They were acting without permission from any authority. They were risking their careers, their membership in the Bodhi galactic community, and possibly their lives. But they were also the only ones moving to help innocent people who were dying. Admiral, Yunji said over the communication system, I've been thinking. What if we're wrong? What if this is all a mistake? Then we'll apologize and go home, Daewon replied. And what if we're right? Daewon looked at the stars ahead of them, knowing that somewhere in that darkness people were fighting for their lives while bureaucrats debated proper procedures. Then we'll do what humans have always done, he said. We'll do what needs to be done, regardless of the consequences. Behind them, the council continued their debate. They would still be arguing about committees and procedures when the humans returned with news of what they had found in the Vega sector. The journey would take 18 hours. For the Altarians still alive on those distant worlds, it would feel like the longest 18 hours of their lives. But for the first time since the attack began, they would have reason for hope. Help was coming. Not from the great galactic bureaucracy with its endless procedures, but from a small group of humans who had simply decided that saving lives was more important than following rules. Commander Boram Shin stared at the view screen as their small fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The Vega sector spread out before them, but it was not the peaceful farming region she remembered from the navigation charts. 3 Altarian, worlds burned in the darkness of space. Orange flames flickered across the surfaces where cities once stood. Smoke clouds drifted between the planets like gray ghosts. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Jae-Sung Yu from his position at the sensor station. "What have they done?" Zephyrian warships moved between the planets like hungry predators. Their ships were painted black with red markings that looked like claws. They were built for war with thick armor and powerful weapons. The humans counted 30 enemy vessels, each one larger than their entire rescue fleet. "Commander," said Sergeant Minha Jung from the communication station, "I'm picking up signals from the surface. There are still survivors down there." Boram felt her heart race. People were still alive. That meant they were not too late. "Admiral Choi to all ships," came the voice over their communication system. "Assessment report." Boram activated her microphone. "Sir, we count 30 Zephyrian warships. They appear to be bombing civilian targets. Sensors show survivors on all 3 worlds, but the numbers are decreasing. Weapon status? 4 ships, standard armament. We're outnumbered 7-1. There was silence on the communication channel. Everyone knew the mathematics of the situation. 4 small human ships against 30 larger enemy vessels was not a fair fight. "Orders, sir?" Boram asked. "Save as many as we can." Boram smiled grimly. It was exactly what she expected him to say. Humans did not give up just because the odds were bad. "Jae-Sung, scan for the largest concentration of survivors. Minha, try to contact them and let them know help is coming." "Commander," Jae-Sung said, "sensors show a major population center on the second planet. Approximately 10,000 Altarians are trapped in underground shelters. Zephyrian ground forces are trying to break in. That's our target. Prepare for combat landing." Captain Yunji's voice came over the communication system. "Boram, I have an idea. It's crazy, but it might work." "I'm listening." "The Zephyrians are focused on their ground assault. Their ships are spread out, attacking different targets. What if we could make them think we're a much larger force?" Boram understood immediately. "Deception. Make them pull back their ships to defend against a threat that doesn't exist." "Exactly. While they're regrouping, we evacuate the civilians." It was a desperate plan, but desperate situations called for creative solutions. Boram had studied Zephyrian military tactics. They were proud warriors, but they were also cautious. They would not risk their fleet against an unknown enemy. "What do you need?" Boram asked. "Remember those old cargo containers we saw drifting near the asteroid belt? If we could rig them with transmitters and basic propulsion, they would look like ships on long-range sensors. Give me 30 minutes. While Yunji worked on her deception, Boram prepared her team for the most dangerous mission of their careers. They would land on a planet under attack, fight through enemy forces, and evacuate 10,000 civilians with only one small ship. "Minha, did you reach the survivors?" "Yes, Commander. I spoke with their leader, a female named Lyra. She says they have been hiding for 2 days. Food and water are running low. Tell her to hold on a little longer." Boram looked at her small team. 12 human soldiers against an unknown number of Zephyrian warriors. In any normal military situation, this would be called suicide. But humans were not normal by galactic standards. "Listen up," she told her team. "We're going down there to save those people. The enemy outnumbers us, outguns us, and has better armor. Our only advantages are speed, surprise, and the fact that we're too stupid to know when we're beaten." Soldiers laughed. It was gallows humor, but it helped ease the tension. "Yunji to all ships. Package delivered. Beginning light show in 3 minutes." On the view screen, Boram watched as dozens of cargo containers emerged from behind asteroids. Yunji had attached small engines and transmitters to them. From a distance, they looked like a fleet of warships emerging from hiding. The effect on the Zephyrians was immediate. Their scattered ships began pulling back from the planets, forming defensive formations to face this new threat. "It's working," Jae-Sung reported. "Enemy ships are moving away from the second planet." "Take us down," Boram ordered. Their ship dove through the planet's atmosphere. The surface below was scarred with blast craters and burning forests. In the distance, Boram could see Zephyrian dropships landing near the underground shelter where the civilians hid. "Landing in 2 minutes," announced their pilot. "Hold tight, this is going to be rough." The ship touched down hard in a field near the shelter entrance. Boram could see Zephyrian soldiers advancing toward a reinforced door built into a hillside. There were perhaps 50 enemy troops, armed with energy weapons and wearing heavy battle armor. "Deploy smoke charges," Boram ordered. "Confusion is our friend." Her team spread out as they left the ship. Gray smoke filled the area, reducing visibility to just a few meters. The Zephyrians began firing blindly, their shots lighting up the smoke like deadly fireworks. Boram used hand signals to direct her soldiers. They moved through the smoke like ghosts, striking at enemy positions and disappearing before the Zephyrians could respond. "Minha, contact the civilians. Tell them to be ready to move." "Already done, Commander. They're gathering at the exit." The battle was chaotic and brutal. The Zephyrians had better equipment, but the humans had something more valuable: the ability to adapt quickly to changing situations. When their original plan failed, they immediately tried something new. Jae-sung rigged explosive charges to create new cover positions. Minha used her technical skills to jam enemy communications. Other soldiers flanked around enemy positions, forcing them to divide their attention. Slowly, the humans pushed the Zephyrians back from the shelter entrance. "Door opening," Minha announced. Altarian civilians began emerging from underground. They were tall, thin beings with blue skin and large, frightened eyes. Many carried children or helped elderly family members walk. "Get them to the ship," Boram ordered, "fast as possible." Her soldiers formed a protective line while the civilians ran across the open ground. Zephyrian shots hit all around them, but the humans kept fighting. "Commander," Jae-sung called out. "Enemy reinforcements incoming. 2 dropships, maybe 100 more soldiers." Boram made a quick decision. "Load the civilians and take off. Don't wait for us." "What about your team?" "We'll find another way out." It was a lie and everyone knew it. But the civilians had to be saved. That was the mission. The human ship lifted off with its cargo of rescued Altarians. It would return to pick up more survivors from other locations. Boram and her team prepared to face impossible odds. But then something unexpected happened. More smoke began filling the area, but this smoke was different. It had a blue tint that Boram recognized. Altarian fighters emerged from hidden positions around the battlefield. They had been waiting, watching the humans fight to save their people. Now they joined the battle. The Altarians had no military training and simple weapons, but they had something that made them dangerous. They were fighting for their homes and families. Together, humans and Altarians held the line until more rescue ships arrived. Captain Yoonji's deception had bought them precious time, and Admiral Yu Choi had used that time to coordinate with other human vessels in nearby systems. When the Council's official response fleet finally arrived 3 weeks later, they found the crisis over. The Zephyrians had retreated. The Altarian civilians had been evacuated to safety. The war that should have lasted months had ended in 3 days. But the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. They had seen what happened when humans decided to act without waiting for permission. The other species realized that humans were not bound by the same rules that controlled everyone else. They would do what they thought was right, regardless of consequences. It was a lesson that would change everything. Dr. Sun Young Han walked with Nari Kim through the quiet research section of the council building. This area was different from the busy diplomatic halls. Here, scientists from many species studied each other, trying to understand how different minds worked. "I have been studying this question for 20 years, Sun Young said as they entered her laboratory. "Why do humans walk alone? The answer is more complicated than most people think." The laboratory was filled with strange equipment. Screens showed brain patterns from different species. Charts covered the walls, comparing how various aliens made decisions. "Look at this," Sun Young said, pointing to a large display. "This shows how the Velthari make choices." The screen showed 5 crystal-like figures standing in a circle. Colored lights flowed between them, creating patterns that grew more complex over time. They cannot act individually, Sun Young explained. Every decision must be agreed upon by their crystal resonance. If even one member disagrees, they cannot move forward. It takes hours for them to decide simple things like what to eat for breakfast. She touched another control and the display changed to show the massive Gorvan. The Gorvan have a different system. They obey their clan elders without question. A young Gorvan would rather die than act without permission from their superiors. Their entire society is built on this hierarchy. The next image showed the floating Nimari in their bubble suits. The Nimari achieve collective consciousness before making any choice. They link their minds together and think as one being. Individual thoughts are considered dangerous and selfish. Nari studied the patterns on the screen. Each species had complex systems for making decisions, but they all shared one thing in common. They all need approval from others, she said. Exactly. Now look at this. Sun Young showed her a recording from the Altarian rescue mission 50 years ago. It showed Bo-Ram Shin and her team leaving their ship to fight the Zephyrians. Watch, carefully. Count how long it takes them to make their decision. Nari watched as Bo-Ram assessed the situation, gave orders to her team, and launched into battle. The whole process took less than 30 seconds. That's impossible, Nari said. How can anyone make such a big decision so quickly? Because humans have something that terrifies every other species in the galaxy, Sun Young replied. Individual moral autonomy. She led Nari to another section of the laboratory. This area contained files and documents from many different worlds. Let me show you something, Sun Young said, pulling up a classified report. This is from Zephyrian intelligence. They spent 5 years trying to understand human decision-making. The report was written in the sharp, angular script of the Zephyrian language, but it had been translated into common galactic text. They tried everything, Sun Young continued. They studied our leaders, thinking that humans followed a strict hierarchy like theirs. They found that human leaders could be overruled by their subordinates. They can, of course. If a human commander gives an immoral order, lower-ranking humans will often refuse to obey. Sometimes they will even arrest their own leaders. Sun Young showed her another document. The Velthari tried to map human group consciousness. They wanted to find our resonance patterns. They discovered that humans can act completely opposite to what their groups want them to do. That sounds like chaos. To them it is. Look at this report from the Nimari. This document was covered in swirling symbols that hurt Nari's eyes to look at directly. The Nimari attempted to predict human behavior using their collective consciousness models. They failed completely. Humans keep surprising them because individual humans can override any social programming. Nari was beginning to understand something that made her feel both proud and frightened. You're saying that other species cannot act independently? They literally cannot. Their brains are wired differently. A Velthari who tried to act alone would suffer physical pain from breaking resonance. A Gorvan who disobeyed their elders would become mentally ill. A Nimari who refused collective consciousness would lose their sanity. Sun Young pulled up another file. This one showed brain scans from different species, but humans can look at a situation, decide what is right, and act on that decision even if everyone around them disagrees, even if their government forbids it, even if it means punishment or death. Is that why they're afraid of us? Imagine you are a galactic leader, Sun Young said. Your power depends on controlling what your people do. You have systems in place to ensure obedience. Then you meet a species that cannot be controlled in the same way. She showed Nari a recording from a recent council session. In it, human delegates were arguing with their own ambassador about trade policies. Other species cannot understand this. How can humans disagree with their own leaders in public? How can they argue about orders? How can they function as a society when individuals can just choose not to participate? Nari thought about her own life. She had often disagreed with her supervisors. She had questioned orders that seemed wrong. She had even refused to do things that went against her conscience. She had always thought this was normal. But if we're so unpredictable, why do they allow us in the council at all? Sun Young smiled sadly. Because they learned something during the Altarian crisis. When humans act independently, they usually act to help others. She showed Nari a compilation of human actions throughout galactic history. Humans rescuing survivors from natural disasters. Human ships defending peaceful colonies from pirates. Human diplomats negotiating peace between warring species. We have this pattern, Sun Young explained. When humans see injustice, they act to stop it. When they see suffering, they try to help. When they see danger, they move toward it instead of away from it. That doesn't sound so scary. It is when you're the one causing the injustice. Sun Young pulled up another classified document. This one came from Security Chief Taemin Lim's office. This report shows attempts by various species to control human behavior. The Gorvan tried to create a hierarchy system for human colonies. The humans ignored it. The Velthari attempted to introduce resonance technology to force group decisions. Humans refused to use it. What about threats? The Zephyrians tried that. They threatened to attack human worlds if we didn't follow their commands. 3 human fleets immediately moved to defensive positions. The Zephyrians backed down. Nari stared at the documents spread out before her. Decades of alien attempts to understand and control human behavior, all ending in failure. So we walk alone because trying to control us is impossible, and trying to force us to follow unfair rules just makes us more determined to do what we think is right. Sun Young closed the files and looked at Nari seriously. The Council learned that the safest thing to do is give us space to make our own choices. They hope that our moral instincts will lead us to make good decisions. And if we make bad decisions, then they have a much bigger problem than just one species they cannot control. Nari left the laboratory with her mind spinning. She understood now why humans were allowed to walk alone through the council halls. It was not trust or respect. It was recognition that humans would walk wherever their conscience told them to go, regardless of who tried to stop them. The other species had learned that the only way to influence human behavior was to appeal to their sense of justice and fairness. Threats and commands only made humans more stubborn. As she walked back through the diplomatic sections, Nari noticed something she had never seen before. Alien delegates watched the humans carefully, but they always gave them plenty of space. They were not showing respect. They were showing caution. The emergency alarms were different this time. Instead of the usual sharp beeps, they made a low pulsing sound that seemed to crawl under the skin. Nari Kim had never heard anything like it before. Ambassador Kyung-ho Park was already moving through the halls when she found him. His usual calm expression was replaced by something much more serious. "Sir, what's happening?" Nari asked as she fell into step beside him. "Level 7 crisis alert," he replied without slowing down. "The highest level possible." They entered the main council chamber to find chaos. But this chaos was different from the usual confusion of bureaucratic panic. This was the chaos of minds that were no longer their own. The Velthari delegates stood motionless in their section. Their crystal bodies flickered with strange, purple light. When they tried to speak, only static came out. Their resonance patterns had been corrupted. The massive Gorvan sat completely still, like statues carved from stone. Their eyes stared at nothing. Their clan elders' voices should have been guiding them, but only silence came through their communication devices. The Nimari floated in their bubble suits, but the purple gas inside swirled in unnatural patterns. They made no sounds at all. Their collective consciousness had been shattered. Even the proud Zephyrian warriors stood in perfect formation, but they did not respond to orders. They waited for commands that would never come. "What's wrong with them?" Nari whispered. "The Hegemony, of course," said Dr. Sun Young Han, appearing beside them. "They've deployed their consciousness weapon." High Chancellor Vexmori called for order, but his voice sounded flat and emotionless. When he spoke, the words seemed to come from somewhere else. "All council members will submit to the new Galactic Authority," he announced. "Resistance is futile. Compliance brings peace." Nari felt a chill run down her spine. They've taken over. His mind, too. Around the chamber, the human delegates looked at each other with growing alarm. They were the only ones who seemed unaffected by whatever was happening. Captain Jinwoo Ryu spoke quietly into his communication device. "All human ships, this is Priority Alpha. Prepare for immediate departure." Jinwoo, Kyung-ho said. What's the situation? Sir, we've lost contact with most of our fleet, but the ships with human crews are still responding. Whatever this weapon does, it doesn't work on us. Commander So-Ra Bayek stepped forward. Ambassador, I have reports coming in from across the galaxy. The Hegemony has launched simultaneous attacks on 17 worlds. Every species with collective consciousness or hierarchical command structures has been compromised. Casualties? Unknown. Sir, but early estimates suggest billions of beings are now under Hegemony control. Nari looked around the chamber at the alien delegates. They stood like empty shells, their minds controlled by an enemy force that had turned their greatest strengths into weaknesses. Why aren't we affected? She asked. Because we don't have collective consciousness, Sun Young explained, and our command structures are loose enough that breaking them doesn't paralyze us. General Woo Jin Kim's voice came through the communication system. All human forces, we have confirmation. The Hegemony weapon targets species that depend on group decision-making or strict hierarchy. Individual consciousness appears to be immune. Kyung-ho looked at the controlled alien delegates, then at his own people. The weight of the situation settled on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. So we're the only ones left who can fight back. Yes, sir. And if we act without council approval? Sir, Jinwoo said, there is no council anymore. Only us. The High Chancellor's voice echoed through the chamber again. Human delegates will report to processing stations for consciousness adjustment. Failure to comply will result in termination. Nari felt her heart race. They're going to try to control us too. They can try, Kyung-ho said grimly. Jinwoo, how long before Hegemony forces reach this station? 6 hours, sir. Time to evacuate all human personnel? 2 hours if we start now. Kyung-ho made the decision that would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Begin evacuation. All human ships are to retreat to safe distance and prepare for combat operations. As they moved toward the exit, Nari looked back at the alien delegates. They stood like statues, their minds trapped by a weapon that used their own social evolution against them. What about them? She asked. We'll come back for them, Kyung-ho promised. But first, we have to stay free ourselves. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Human ships evacuated from council stations across the galaxy. Military vessels prepared for battles they had never expected to fight. Civilian transports carried refugees to hidden bases in distant star systems. General Woo Jin coordinated the response from his flagship. His staff worked frantically to track Hegemony movements and organize resistance efforts. Sir, reported his intelligence officer, we've identified the source of the consciousness weapon. It's a massive space station in the Korth home system. If we could destroy it, the controlled populations would be freed, Woo Jin finished. How many ships would we need? For a direct assault? Everything we have, sir. And even then, the odds would be against us. Sora's voice came over the communication channel. General, I have an alternative plan. It's dangerous, but it might work. I'm listening. The Hegemony expects us to attack with our full fleet. But what if we didn't? What if a small force could sneak past their defenses while they're preparing for a major battle? It was the same strategy that had worked during the Altarian crisis. Use the enemy's expectations against them. How small a force? Woo Jin asked. 12 ships. Volunteers only. That's suicide, Commander. Sir, with respect, everything we do from now on is probably suicide. The question is whether we die fighting or die in a Hegemony processing center. Woo Jin made the hardest decision of his military career. Approved. Select your volunteers. The mission launched 6 hours later. 12 human ships carrying fewer than 200 people departed for the most heavily defended system in Hegemony space. Meanwhile, the main human fleet engaged Hegemony forces across multiple sectors. They fought with everything they had, using tactics that confused and frustrated an enemy, used to fighting predictable hierarchical opponents. Human captains disobeyed orders when they saw better opportunities. Human soldiers broke formation to save civilians. Human crews modified, their ships in ways that violated every safety protocol. To the Hegemony, it looked like chaos. To the humans, it was just Tuesday. The climax came when Sora's small fleet reached the consciousness weapon station. They found it defended by thousands of ships, all crewed by controlled beings who had once been free. "Those are Velthari ships," reported Jinwu from the lead vessel, "and Gorvan dreadnoughts. They're using our friends against us." "Then we'll have to be very careful not to hurt them," Sora replied. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. The humans fought to disable rather than destroy, trying to save the crews who were no longer in control of their actions. They succeeded, but at a terrible cost. Half of their ships were lost in the assault. But the consciousness weapon was destroyed, and across the galaxy, billions of minds were suddenly free again. In the aftermath, as the galactic community slowly recovered from their ordeal, a new understanding emerged. The other species realized that humans had saved them all, but they also realized something more frightening. Humans had done it alone, without permission, without oversight, without anyone to control their actions. When the council reconvened months later, new protocols were established. Humans would be given even more freedom to act independently, but they would also be watched more carefully than ever before. Nari Kim, now promoted to senior diplomat, walked alone through the council halls. Other species delegates moved aside to let her pass, not out of respect, but out of recognition that humans would go wherever they chose to go. "We saved them," she said to Ambassador Kyung-ho during one of their regular meetings. "Yes, we did. But they're more afraid of us than ever." "Yes, they are." "Was it worth it?" Kyung-ho looked out at the stars beyond the station's windows. Somewhere among those lights were worlds full of beings who were alive and free because humans had chosen to act when everyone else could not. "Ask the Altarians," he said. "Ask the Velthari children who grew up free instead of enslaved. Ask the Gorvan who can still think their own thoughts. And if they say it was worth it, then we keep walking alone, knowing that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the willingness to stand up for them when they cannot stand up for themselves." Nari understood now why humans walked alone in the council halls. It was not a privilege or a punishment, it was a responsibility. They walked alone because they were the only ones who could.